Conflicting interests. Conflict occurs when the interests of different stakeholders clash, with internal and external conflicts. Internal, the employer versus the employee with regard to wages, for example. External, firm versus consumer with regard to quality, firm and suppliers with regard to payment, and firms and the government with regard to the environment. So these are just examples. Conflict resolution. Now, always the best way to resolve any conflict is non-legislative, without using the law. The first one then is talking. This helps with misunderstandings and clarifies areas causing conflicts. B. Negotiations. Justifying your position to someone else and through discussion and bargaining reach a mutually acceptable solution. Now, before, during and after, before the negotiation, identify your ideal result and identify your bottom line. In other words, what you will accept. During the negotiation, outline your position, agree non-contentious issues, reach a trade-off position, and know when to stop. And after negotiation, show respect so that both sides are happy. Now, that's come up before in the Leaving Cert. What are the benefits of a non-legislative approach? Conflict is resolved quickly, in a number of hours or a number of days. It's cheaper. Courts and solicitors are not used. Resolution can be kept confidential. It will not be reported in the newspapers or trade magazines or in the media. And relationships can be improved between the sides. In fact, conflict can often create a situation whereby both parties begin to have a new respect for one another. Now, we're now going to have a look at the legislative methods for dealing with conflict. So we're dealing with legislative methods of solving consumer conflict. So the first one, and probably the most common one of all, is the Sale of Goods and Supply of Services Act 1980. This act is designed to ensure that new goods and services bought by consumers must meet certain minimum standards. Goods sold must be 1. Of merchantable quality. The goods must be of an acceptable standard, taking into account what they are supposed to do, their price, and their durability. 2. Goods sold must be fit for purpose, especially if the buyer relies on the seller's skills and judgment. 3. Goods sold must correspond with sample if sold by sample. The product must be absolutely the same as the sample in every way. Goods sold must match description if sold by a brochure or a salesperson, I suppose nowadays if sold online. Goods sold entitles the buyer to legal ownership and quiet possession, and services provided by a professional must reflect the necessary skill to provide the services. Now, note the above statutory rights are implied in every sale and cannot be modified in any way. So if you're asked to outline the conditions of the Sale of Goods and Supply of Services Act 1980, they are the 6. Now, also included in the Act, but only answer if you're specifically asked to talk about them. A guarantee. A manufacturer's guarantee is an additional safeguard and does not infringe on a customer's statutory rights. A guarantee must be legible and specific to that good. It must clearly state the name and the address of the guarantee offerer, that's probably the manufacturer, and the period of guarantee must also be stated. Number 3, the consumer is entitled to a full refund if there's a major fault, a repair or a replacement. The consumer is entitled to nothing if the goods have been abused or because the consumer doesn't like the good after purchase. Caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. Once you've bought it, it's yours. Number 4, the retailer cannot limit their liability by the use of signs such as goods not exchanged or no refunds. It is the retailer who's responsible for repairing the good, not the manufacturer. And lastly, the Act also prohibits demand for payment for unsolicited goods known as inertia selling. Now, oftentimes when this comes up in the exam, you're asked to evaluate. So if you're asked to evaluate, then you write out the statutory rights, the 6 conditions stated in number 1, goods must be. And then you evaluate. The law does a good job of protecting consumers. Why? Because it makes sure that the consumers get their money back if the product or service is not up to the legal standard. In other words, consumers do not lose their money if they buy a faulty good. And consumers cannot be tricked into thinking that they must accept a credit note by retailers who put up signs.